Hey everyone, so my number one recommended camber plate for a mostly street and some track use BMW F chassis 234 series is hands down the Millway Street camber plates. And if you recall, a few years ago I did a overview review of them when they first came out, and since then Millway has updated the design. So I have for you a latest revision set of camber plates here, and we'll go ahead and take a look at what the differences are. So this particular set of camber plates is for the F8X M2 competition M3 M4, as denoted by this kind of reinforcement ring here and the 3 holes to support the aluminum strut brace. So that'll differ from the regular 234 series version, which just has like one big little nub for their singular attachment point to the strut brace. And if you've seen my previous video, one of the things that should be immediately noticeable is that now Millway is providing studs for all of the mounting points instead of the previous just regular hole with the helicoil. Now there is that regular hole with helicoil in here in case you don't want to use studs and you want to use bolts instead. But the studs are a nice addition because they will not protrude below the bottom surface of the camber plate. So that means, if you're adding additional strut braces or, whatever else here, you don't have to worry about going out and getting new bolts every time, making sure that they sit underneath and are flush. So that's just something to make it a little bit easier for, you and I as users. So that was a good touch there. One of the other things, just quickly looking at this, that I think is nice from a bit of a usability standpoint is if we look at the camber sliding adjustment mechanism. Before, these used a hex bolt up top to secure it, and now they've changed this to a Torx. So less chance of this stripping. Also uses a bigger bit. So I found that really nice as well. The last change is because we're using studs, now we will have to use nuts, and Millway supplies a pretty thick washer here to slide over that and go on top of your shock tower, and then they supply some more of these little nuts to go on there as well. These are pretty light. Millway does have different torque specs depending on whether you're using grade 8.8 or 10.9 hardware. You can find that on their website. Disassembly of the new version plate is the exact same as the old one. You take the 3 bolts off of the sliding mechanism. So here's that top piece here, right? If we look underneath, it's got the channel for the real magic of this, and that is the polyurethane inserts that encase the mounting plate for the damper shaft. So what makes the Millway Street camber plate so good? Well, it's got these pretty rigid but still ever so slightly plastic polyurethane inserts that encapsulate this main mounting plate or washer, and this ensures that there's no metal to metal contact between this mounting plate and the rest of that. So that's what's going to damp a lot of that NVH that you normally get with camber plates. Now, because this is still more solid than a spherical more solid than the stock top mount. You'll still probably get a little bit of NVH, but it's really subtle and it's mostly kind of like background noise. So once again, we see this design carrying over. It looks really good. If we look here, you can see that gap in between where the end of the mounting plate or washer is and the exterior diameter of the polyurethane insert. And then one of the other things I noticed was they also put this kind of like stainless shim on top of the polyurethane in here to go between that and the inside of the top of this the main adjustment mechanism. So I'm not exactly sure what that's for. Maybe it's to support this a little bit better, but I'm not entirely sure why you would need that. It is pretty slick. You can see it slides very easily. So maybe this is to allow the polyurethane to rotate, slide around within this, so it doesn't make any squeaking noises. Because most polyurethane, if you don't grease it, it can create a squeaking noise. And this is obviously a greaseless assembly. Interestingly enough, though, on the lower portion, so if we look at this is going to sit inside the cup there. On the bottom side, there wasn't one of those shims Yeah, I mean, unless they only think you need a rotation shim on one end of it. But I just thought that was a little bit interesting that they would put a shim on top and not on the bottom. As far as the lower camber adjuster piece goes, really nothing's really changed on this guy. You still have your 3 holes with helicoils, so even though this has threads for 6 bolts, you're only going to use 3 of them. And I think it's nice that it's marked this way too, because then you won't accidentally put it the wrong way, although quite frankly it shouldn't matter if you put it the wrong way if all of these did have those helicoils in them, but we can clearly see there's 3 of them that do, so you will know which way to align them. One other thing Millway includes that I don't have in here, because I did buy these secondhand, is there are M8 by 20 millimeter bolts for these 3 strut brace mounting holes. And the reason why they're that short is because these holes don't go all the way through the camber plate, so if you use too long of a screw, it'll just bottom out here and you won't be sufficiently clamping your strut brace. There are some washers just like with these nuts as well that are also included. And if we take a look at how much total travel this has, Millway, they have some indices here, which is really nice. A lot of the camber plates don't have that, so you kind of usually take a Sharpie and figure out where you're going to mark things at. But anyways, this guy has 0 to 22 millimeters of sliding adjustment here. So even though it says 30, you can't actually get that high. That's because I believe this plate, this main body plate, and the plate for the spherical bearing one are the same, which will give you a little bit more, but the street one is a little bit limited. However, this should still be plenty of camber adjustment. So I'm going to assemble this guy back together and take this lower part. Oop, there goes my shim. See, very slick. Take the lower part. Obviously the longer channel is the side where the lower assembly with 2 helicoils is going to go on. So I'll put that over there. Then I can place the polyurethane assembly. So right, we have our bottom polyurethane, our mounting plate, and the top one. Then we can put our washer on there. And I gotta hold this level so it doesn't slide. And finally take our top assembly and get that all together. And then I can just thread these 3 bolts in to hold this whole assembly together. So pretty simple design. You don't need any like really special tools, to service this. Like if, let's say, for whatever reason your polyurethane wears out, you can easily get a replacement set of polyurethane from Millway. They've always been excellent at customer support and response time in my experience. So really easily serviceable plates. They do usually offer pretty much every part you could want on here for a reasonable price. So servicing one of these or getting replacement parts isn't a huge chore or prohibitively expensive, where you're better off just buying a new plate like some other brands. So it's easy to see why these are still my favorite for a dual use car. I've had these on my F31 for more than 30,000 miles and they're still going fantastic.